Welcome to a very special finale episode of Tale of Two Cities, the series that has taken us on an exciting journey across the globe. We have heard insightful conversations of the world leaders, presidents, prime ministers and mayors with Dikshu Kukreja, a master architect and urban designer. Dikshu is a Harvard alumnus and the proprietor of CP Kukreja Architects, a practice that has a 50-year-old legacy in India. His critical inquiry and boundless reflections have helped us discover similarities between cities that were glaringly obvious yet delicately subtle. Today, he compares New Delhi in India with Washington, D.C. in the United States of America. Let's turn it over to Dikshu now to see what he has for us.
Learning about 8 pairs of iconic cities, meeting 8 progressive global leaders from across the world has emboldened in me the idea of an open world with knowledge that is shared. The cities in focus today are Washington, D.C. in United States of America and New Delhi in India. Washington, D.C. and New Delhi are both capital cities, which means that they are the centers of political and administrative power in their respective countries. As a result, both have a strong presence of government buildings and institutions. Both have a mix of different ethnic and cultural groups, and as a result, both cities have a wide range of cultural attractions and events. They are both centers of education and research. The British Empire moved their capital from Calcutta to New Delhi in 1911. However, Delhi has been around for a millennia and was a preeminent city long before the Mughal or British set foot here. Washington, D.C. is a fairly young city with historical traces going back only as far as 1790. Today, Washington, D.C. and New Delhi are strategically poised. What transpires in the administrative corridors of Washington, D.C. makes ripples in the world in terms of policy making, foreign diplomacy, and trade. Internationally, New Delhi is considered a political powerhouse. The two cities share more than one can imagine, be it the democratic flavor, the cultural verve, and believe it or not, even the tenets of urban planning. Speaking of the architectural character, both places have a central civic space known as Central Vista in New Delhi and the National Mall in Washington, D.C., both of which form the nucleus of major governmental operations and infrastructure. In fact, the original hexagonal layout of New Delhi along Raisina Hill drew inspiration from the National Mall at Washington, D.C. Finally, both cities have a vibrant arts and culture scene with a range of music, theater, and other performance venues. I'm thrilled to have this dialogue with the Deputy Mayor of Washington, D.C., Mr. John Falcicchio, discovering similarities between Washington, D.C. and New Delhi. Mayor, welcome to this Tale of Two Cities. You're tuning in today from Washington, D.C., and I'm here in Delhi. Washington, D.C. is one of the most iconic cities in the world. It represents a sense of robustness, a permanence. It is easily identifiable from the prominent government buildings along the National Mall. At the same time, Washington, D.C. is also a fairly new city. Established only a little over 200 years ago, it has emerged as a significant actor in the world arena in a relatively short period of time. Speaking from an architect's point of view, the urban character of Washington, D.C. brilliantly embodies what it takes to be the most powerful city in the world. What can you tell us, Mayor, about this distinctive urban character of Washington, D.C.?
When people think of Washington, D.C., they think of the U.S. Capitol, they think of the Washington Monument, and they think of the White House as well. What's unique, probably than any other American city, is we're actually, our growth is bound by something we call the Height Act, which is a law that says that buildings can only rise so tall. And what that does is it creates this vista that allows people from around the city and around the region to actually view some of those iconic buildings like the Capitol and the Washington Monument, not just from around Washington, D.C., but really from around the region.
Many prominent figures from America have found the splendors of India to be the wellspring of their own wisdom and philosophies. If we talk about Reverend Martin Luther King, for instance, who drew extensively from the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi and came to New Delhi in 1959 to learn about his life and ideologies. Reverend King's visit to India had a profound influence on his understanding of non-violent resistance and his commitment to America's civil rights movement. Another eminent figure, an architect, in fact, to emerge during this time was Joseph Allen Stein. Born in the Midwest of USA, he was drawn to India because of Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore and spent 45 years of his life here in New Delhi. He popularized his unique design vocabulary of regional modern architecture, which celebrated simplicity and dismissed ostentations. He designed some of the most iconic buildings in New Delhi, like the India Habitat Center, India International Center, and many more. There is, in fact, an entire neighborhood in New Delhi named after him, popularly known as Steinabad. And the fact is, there has been an undeniable respect and admiration that both countries, US and India, have had for each other in the past and present. Being an important political figure in the capital of the USA and being so prominently known as an advocate of urban planning as well, please tell us about how the cultural revolution has taken place in the city of Washington, D.C.
International influence is so important to our culture and our design and our rich diversity. And when you think way back to the founding of the nation and of Washington, D.C., Pierre Lafont is known as the designer of Washington, D.C. He actually was commissioned by the United States government to design a capital city. And so the street grid that you see with our wide boulevards and our ordered streets actually is influenced or really designed by Lafont. And so that is something that we pay homage to. Current times is a more expression of architecture than ever before. So we work with our partners in the federal government to find underutilized land to put it back to productive use. One of those areas is called the Wharf. And if you go to the Wharf today, it is really kind of the quintessential revitalized neighborhood that any city in the nation would want to have in their city. And what is great about it is that it has unique architecture. So one of the things, again, that people don't think of Washington, D.C. as, they think of it as a place to come do business, but it's also a place to come and enjoy a good restaurant, a good show, and the culture of the U.S. as well.
So that's amazing. One of the aspects that cities must come to grip with is that of climate change. Delhi is no stranger to the adverse effects of this crisis. Now, one crucial lesson I've learned through Tale of Two Cities is that the power of nature is unsurmountable. We cannot begin to build muscles against it. Our best bet is to build our buildings in congruence with the changing conditions, to build cohesively with nature, not against, but beside it. What are the immediate perils of climate change that you see being faced by Washington, D.C.? And more importantly, what are the steps to try to solve that problem?
We have two great rivers, the Potomac River and the Anacostia River, that flow through Washington, D.C. But what we've seen is a lot of interior flooding. And that is because rain has come on quicker than it has in the past, and it's been more severe. So the city has embarked on a project called our Clean Rivers Project. What that does is it actually creates new tunnels under the city in order to capture rainwater so that our systems aren't overrun by water and that we could actually treat water before it flows back into our river. So all that sewer water, instead of going directly into the river, can actually be captured. So this is really kind of a one-of-a-kind project that we have underway in Washington, D.C. We'll be ahead of many cities. But what's also unique is the way that we've taken on our contribution to fighting climate change is we don't have a lot of industry in Washington, D.C. when you think about manufacturing. That's not really the heart of our economy. Our economy is more professional service. We put in place the highest standards to make sure that our buildings are as energy efficient as possible. So sometimes you'll look at Washington, D.C., and you'll see all those great monuments, and you'll see this unique architecture, but you'll also see underneath it that there's actually a commitment to climate change, and that is done with how we build and retrofit our buildings as well.
This is the era of reevaluating past patterns of growth and to retrace a trajectory that adheres to a vision of sustainable habitats of the future. Delhi has proved itself as a city that takes this relearning process quite seriously. The metro system here is one of the largest and most efficient in the world. It also has one of the largest network of zero-emission bus transportation. Construction of mega structures is ongoing to better integrate the city. Transport-oriented development projects, known as TOD projects, commissioned in the city are also a fine example of this. What sort of urban sustainable transformations one sees taking place in Washington, D.C.?
Well, it's interesting when you say, you talk about the transit system. So our transit system is both rail. We have a subway system, similar to what you would find if you went to New York City. And we also have a robust bus system. So we want to make sure that we have as many people as possible, or as many homes as possible, right at those metro stations to make it as easy as possible for people to access the transit that we've invested so much in. What we're working on right now is to electrify our buses. So in addition to our metro system, which is a regional system, so we do that with the District of Columbia, with the state of Maryland, and with the Commonwealth of Virginia, we have a local bus system as well. And we're trying to electrify those buses and do it through renewable energy as much as possible in order to get to where you are already. So I think transportation is a real exciting opportunity for us to really fight back on climate change. And one of the things that we're doing in our planning processes is trying to put people closer to job centers as well. So closer to transit and closer to job centers.
So Mayor, this is precisely what Tale of Two Cities is all about. We both are sitting on opposite sides of the planet, but really if you see the challenges both cities, Washington, D.C. and New Delhi are facing, challenges over time, challenges post-pandemic, and the solutions that we are finding as well are strikingly similar. So when you talk about transit-oriented development, both the cities are experimenting with that model. And I can say for India as a whole, this will be quite a breakthrough in the way development will take shape in our cities in the future, because Delhi is one of the first cities to be experimenting with TOD. And similarly, when you talk about sustainable urban transport, both the cities are sort of finding the right solutions.
For us, it's really important that we celebrate the diversity of our city and of our residents. We have people from around the world who come here regularly because of our great universities, because of the business of the federal government. So celebrating diversity is something at the top of our agenda and something that Mayor Bowser spends a lot of time on. So I'm wondering, how do you celebrate diversity and how do you sort of uplift that as a strength rather than a challenge of the city?
Delhi has a huge history behind it, and even historically it's had many different kind of kingdoms and many different kind of layers of history that have come to it and influenced it. But even over time, and when we take the post-independence or post-partition aspect of Delhi, we've had the layer where you've had people from across the country come in and migrate here. For example, when the capital moved from Kolkata to Delhi, it was the British who took this piece of land, especially the New Delhi precinct within Delhi, and created a completely new city out of it. Globally, Delhi is becoming a center in many ways of different culture, different expatriates who are coming into the city. And like Washington, D.C., what you said, even here, Delhi has layers of many institutions, places of higher learning, and those kind of institutions themselves, as you will imagine, attract people from different parts of the country and the globe. So I think in that respect, Delhi is very diverse. And you see this diversity not only in its architecture or in its cuisine or even the languages that you see people speak here, but I think there's some vibrancy that this city holds, which is really a result of its overall diversity.
You mentioned cuisine as a way that we sort of celebrate each other's culture and diversity. And sometimes we do that without even knowing it. So one of the things I know that we talked about earlier is really the unique architecture of Washington, D.C., and how I painted a picture of the vista. We're a city that our buildings are capped in height. So if you were able to be anywhere in Washington, D.C., and you'd be at sort of the highest level of a building, you'd be able to see the Washington Monument, which is 555 feet. You'd be able to see the Dome of the Capitol, which rises 329 feet. Tell me a little bit about the vista that I would see if I walked out of your studio and looked out on the city.
I would say in that sense, Delhi differs a bit because here the pressures of land have been so immense and the value of real estate has gone through over the last few decades in an absolutely a proportion, a scale which is unimaginable. Now seeing a changing skyline of Delhi. So from those low-rise buildings which typically Delhi was known for, you're seeing a more vertical, more high-rise buildings coming and a more vertical skyline emerging in the city. And then also with the planning principles we talked about, like transit-oriented development, TOD, etc., you see high-density, high-rise development taking shape in Delhi. So I think the city is in transformation, and I only hope that the transformation is for the better, and most importantly, whichever direction this urban form or architectural character takes, I think it must maintain the ethos of sustainability.
So there's a lot of pressure on us to build more housing. But one of the ways that we want to address that is by adjusting or tinkering with our Height Act. So the Height Act was actually passed in 1899. It was updated in 1910. It hasn't been changed since. And so we think that there's an opportunity to adjust the Height Act so that we can have a little bit more height. Well, right now we're capped at 160 feet, a little bit more height to create more housing, more transit-oriented development. So it seems like together we have some of the same challenges and opportunities. And I know that we can definitely continue to learn from one another.
So like I said, Tale of Two Cities is about bringing us together, not only to explore the challenges that the cities face, but also look at solutions that we can offer to each other and work together on. There's a lot of impetus that we have here now on affordable housing, because we have had in the past an anomaly where you have housing for the affluent, which is sitting right next to people who are living in shanties or slums. So that is going through a major transformation now with the policies that the government of India has about housing for all. And so is the importance of public spaces. So even as I know in Washington, D.C., you're working on revitalizing cityscapes or streets, we are doing the same as we speak here in Delhi. So I think lessons to share and take our cities forward for a better future. But thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much.
And with that, I conclude our Tale of Two Cities, New Delhi and Washington, D.C. The series has come a long way to substantiate the theory that we are indeed closer than we think. Here, we learned that Bogota's urban integration models found their reinterpretations in Ahmedabad. Tirana and Panaji adhere to similar codes of honor. Melbourne was discovered by a ship named Calcutta. Rotterdam and Kochi, age-old allies facing similar climate crisis due to their proximity to the sea. San Marino and Oroville are compact, self-sufficient micro-communities. Mexico City and Mumbai are mega-cities that are sinking. Hanover and Bhopal value culture and arts in a similar way. And today, we saw how Washington, D.C. and New Delhi form the microcosms of their respective countries and embody the spirit of democracy so well. India has marched its way to the global arena to become the 5th largest and fastest growing economy in the world. The country is undergoing colossal socio-economic and governance transformation. Today, the world is looking towards India as it restores its pre-colonial supremacy. However, the next epoch is going to be that of advancing towards a sustainable future. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is an old Sanskrit text which translates to "the world is one family." It reminds us that there is but one world and one future, no matter what your geographical whereabouts might be. And in a world that is becoming increasingly complex, the need of the hour is to share knowledge and find shared solutions. Although we now turn the last page of this Tale of Two Cities, don't you feel as though our journey is only beginning? There yet remains a lot to discover in cities across the world. This is me, Dikshu Kukreja, signing off from Tale of Two Cities.